I have research in 3 different areas at the moment. First area is in aviation. I've been working in that area since the early 1990s, originally with a colleague, Bob Holt, who was a private pilot, but he's now retired, and so unfortunately he's left me to soldier on alone with a very large cadre of student and research scientists. The work in that area has focused over the years in different areas. Our early work focused on changing the way that we train crew resource management. When there are multiple pilots in a cockpit, it's important to use each of them as a resource. And in early cockpits, which were based on a military application, many of the pilots came out of the military, there was a very strict hierarchy. And a lot of accidents were caused when the first officer or the flight engineer saw something going wrong and was unable to convince the captain that it was an important issue. Crew resource management was a training program designed to allow all the pilots in the cockpit to speak up and to be heard. But many pilots heard that as, I should be nice to Johnny, or I should be friendly with Susie. They didn't hear it as conveying needed information in a clear and concise manner. So we worked on a project with a local regional air carrier over 4 or 5 years to develop procedures for implementing what we thought were good examples of crew resource management. So as, for example, before you take off, they were supposed to do a briefing. Very often, the 2 pilots looked at each other and said, yep, good to go. What we said was the procedure was that they had to brief what the current weather was, what the current weight of the aircraft was, any conditions such as rain that might change the amount of space that they needed to take off. And then they needed to brief what are the minimal conditions under which they were willing to take off, and what would they do if they hit those minimum conditions. After we put that into place in the airline and said, you can fail if you don't follow this procedure, they started to realize that what we meant by CRM, or crew resource management, was to convey needed information. And when they looked at the information we were suggesting they had put in the briefings, they went, oh, that makes sense. So over a 3-year period, we developed a program, we put it in place, we trained pilots in one fleet, not in another fleet that was fairly similar, and we looked at performance over the next 2 years and found to our pleasure that it in fact improved performance and safety. So that's the real goal of the aviation program. At the moment, we're focusing on changes that will happen in the aviation airspace as a function of what they're calling next gen, the new generation of air traffic control. And that has implications for how air traffic controllers and pilots interact. And so we are doing research that we hope will inform the regulations that the FAA will write in terms of what's safe to put in the aircraft.